Welcome to Live at the Ink Home Edition. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Evolution Sails, Sailing Evolved, VX1, the fastest growing one design in North America, Sailing Ink, get it at the ink, J-Boats, Sailing Ink is the broadest reaching J-Boat dealer in North America. Also, be sure to stop by thesailingink.com to see today's daily deal. Enjoy the show.
Evolution Sales would like to let you know that while we remain diligent in social distancing and virus aware, Evolution Sales is back to 80% in staffing and workflow worldwide. Our service teams are busy with repairs and canvas work while our production teams are working hard to fulfill our backlog of new sales for our cruising and racing customers. Our hope is to be back to 100% within a month and have our backlog caught up at the same time. Give your local Evolution Sales loft a call if you are interested in new sales or service. We are here to help.
All right, everybody, welcome to Live at the Ink Home Edition. I'm not even sure which episode this is. It seems like I've been doing this for a little over a month now, and I think we're probably 14 or 15 episodes. Pretty excited today, actually. We get to meet a yacht designer, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't know a whole lot about him, but I'm learning a lot about him. I've been reading his bio today and doing a lot of research on him, and you know, turns out he's designed a lot of the boats that we watch, you know, do some of these amazing races, you know, around the planet, and you know some of the the Atlantic Cup that starts here in Charleston. He's designed the 40s, and so we're gonna try and get Merfyn Owen in here and see if we can't pull him in. Hold on one second. 2, 1, and there he is. Hey, Merfyn, can you hear me okay? I can't hear you now. Oh, wait. Something has gone awry now. I'm not sure what it is. Hold on. Now I know. How about now?
I can hear you loud and clear.
No problem. We got you now. So let me make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly first. Merfyn?
Well, actually, anything works for me, but it's actually Merfyn.
Merfyn, okay. All right.
Answer to most anything.
That works. So, but after reading your bio, it seems to me like, most of your professional life, you've really been involved with naval, architecture and engineering it seems like that's something you wanted to do from day one. Is, you know, what got you into that?
Well, I started sailing first, and yeah, I was sailing first. I was 16 years of age. I never been on a boat before, and I got the opportunity to go sailing with a mob called the Ocean Youth Club, and
Okay.
so it was sailing that started me. And I was my first week on the water was in 1979. I remember it clearly, August the 12th. It was the Fastnet race. I wasn't in the race. I was on the sail training boat, and it was cold and wet and miserable. I didn't have the right gear, and but I just loved it. Yeah, I was out in jeans. I was literally wearing jeans and a woolly pulley that my mother had given me, and it was frightening, cold, wet, but and until that time, I literally got the bug that week. Until that time, I put all my effort and energy and enthusiasm and time into playing rugby. I wanted to put on the red jersey and play for Wales, and
Okay.
that was a dream as a young man. So yachts and yacht design, I don't come from a sailing family, was really completely left field. 4 years later, after having been in the Merchant Navy, I was at university, and I answered an advert in Yachts and Yachting, and I went sailing with a fellow called Rupert Kidd on a little 30-footer course. And first time I'd gone racing, I'd done an awful lot of hours at sea. I would consider myself a seaman, and I was relief skippering 72-foot sailing yachts by then, but I was not a racing guy. But I answered Rupert's email because I wanted to learn. I ended up on this little 30-footer. I learned a ton, and for whatever reason that year, the year after I was lucky enough to go sailing on an 85-foot cat, and
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a hell of a story. I ended up on this 85-footer because I won UK's Young Yachtsman of the Year award, and that was my prize was to go sailing on this 85-footer from the UK up to Kiel to deliver the boat for the Round Europe race in '85, and I was pretty techy at the time. I was doing my mechanical engineering, naval architecture degree at University College London, with the idea of going back into the Navy again. I wasn't really thinking of doing yacht design, and I ended up navigating this cat on the Europe race itself because the skipper had fallen out with his navigator, as happens occasionally. We know that happens. So as a 22-year-old, I ended up in amongst this amazing fleet of boats, boats like Apricot and Paragon, Charles Heisdick, and it was astounding to see all these different boats. I mean, you couldn't help but, as an engineer, start to get interested in that side of things.
Right.
And with Rupert, we'd always finish our racing at the end of the evening, end of the day, we'd be in the pub, and we'd do what many people all over the world have done over the years, and you design the boat that you'd like on a BIM. Honestly, that's how it started, and it might not have gone anywhere, as it hasn't for dozens of people, dozens of potential designers, probably hundreds.
Right.
It might not go anywhere, but as it happens, Rupert was in the oil business, and he was working out of the office in London, which is how I'd met him when I was at University College London.
Okay.
And he found, I thought it was an oil field, but actually I remember now, it was a gas field in Colombia, of all places. And after I graduated, I literally got a phone call from Rupert saying, I'm on my way to London for a meeting. I found a gas field. They promoted me. I'm making a ton more money than I used to. How about designing that boat that we'd always thought would be great to do? And I met him at the airport in London, and I found a design contract from somewhere, and we signed the design contract there and then at the airport with a BA check-in lady as the as the witness.
Really?
And really like that. Just like that. Years of sailing and a couple of years of great friendship, but literally, yes, just like that. Incredibly lucky. Anyway, cut a long story short, that's how I got into yacht design. But I only ever thought it would be for one boat. I did not go to university, and although I studied naval architecture, I did not do it to become a yacht designer. I did it. I did it because it felt like the right thing to do at the time. The circumstances in the Navy weren't great, and I felt it was a good option. I had a good opportunity to go to a great university. But I thought I'd only designed the one boat, and Fiery Cross.
And this is the Fiery Cross, right? The one that's right here?
That's the Fiery Cross.
Okay.
Quite a machine in its day. And it was successful straight out of the box. And that's when my life changed. And I moved on and designed another, and I got working in the sailing industry. I did an awful lot of deliveries. I was a project manager of several big builds. I just managed to meet people. I bumped into the right people at the right time, and did the right things. I kept, to a certain extent, my mouth closed, which is cool for me, and my ears open, and I just had to bump into the right people at the right time, and that's how it happened.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it looks like, once you got it kicked off, this was in 1986, 87, right?
Yep.
And then, you worked on the construction of the John Shuttleworth, a 65-foot cat after that. And then looks like you jumped into a bunch of them, up through 1993, including it looks like the engineer of a composite air transportable building.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Where did you find that out?
In the bio that you sent me.
I've forgotten about that. Yeah. The truth of the matter is that when you start off as a young man, you're not going. If you're starting up your own business, you're not going to be able to put meat and 3 veg on the table just being a yacht designer. You have to do a lot of different things. So I was delivering boats, I was project managing, I was designing, and I was building, and that actually went on for probably 2 decades. It was probably not until 2008 that we stopped as what was then Owen Clark Design, which was, we were 8 people, and only at that point in 2007, 2008 did we stop project managing and just designing boats. It doesn't come easy, can I say. You have to work really hard at it. And in the early days, I did just about everything you can imagine to keep whilst designing boats.
Right. But then it looks like after 2010, you really got deep into it. You designed 7 Open 60s and 14 Class 40s in that time between 2000 and 2010. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
And then in 2011, the Imoca Open 60, which now is going to be the ocean race boat. I mean, those are pretty amazing yachts. I'm not going to lie.
It is. They're an interesting boat, and the way that the Open 60s developed was marvelous. Really, the way you start developing these boats. I remember way back in the early 90s, thinking about. I used to sell fully crewed boats as well, and I wasn't the only one thinking this at the time. It was very strange to be sailing around on a fully crewed boat with weight on the rail, feeding it. And so, what would you do if you're sailing short-handed? Well, the iteration is that, well, when you've got wind, you need some kind of righting moment in order to stop the boat turning over. Well, some of that comes from putting lead on the bottom. But if you put too much lead on the bottom, then the boat becomes only as quick downwind as it is upwind, aka the 12 meters. So how do you get that lighter? Well, you obviously a smaller bulb. Well, if you put a smaller bulb on, then you need more writing moment. Then you put crew on the rail. How can we get rid of those crew? Well, the first evolution in the 80s was water ballast. And then by the beginning of the 90s, you start thinking, oh, well, rather than water ballast, how about we swing that lead and move it to weather? And that's how that came about. And then you're now in the next revolution where okay, well, how can I increase the writing moment more and make the bulb even smaller and the boat even lighter? And you get to the point where you're creating your writing moment from a foil.
Right.
And that's actually, these things don't just happen by accident because somebody thought about it one day. There'll be a whole group of people all thinking at the same time, all right, and working the problem step by step. And that's how it's evolved. A rule changes, and then you adapt to it to try and to take up the slack from one rule into the next rule. It's not rocket science. But it is logical thought. It's not an art form. It's engineering and logical thought.
Right. I did find this little video when I was doing a little research today. Let me see if I can get it to show on the screen. This was one of the I guess flows. This looks like it's from an Imoca 60, just your design shot underneath where we have the canning keel, and this was actually on YouTube. Can you see it? It shows the flow underneath the boat and your canted keel. And then it looks like it transforms into the lifting wing. Are you able to see that? Being on a phone? Probably not. Were you able to see that at all, Murph?
I didn't see that at all.
Okay, so it's a video of. I'll just pull it down. It looks like a computer generated model of the bottom of the Imoca 60, where it shows the canning keel and the flow over the bottom of the boat, and then it looks like you've actually added a foil towards the end of the video where we're creating a little bit of lift. I'm not sure where the video came from, but it was on your YouTube page.
Oh,
but for some reason it's not popping up because I think it's you're on a phone feed, which is a little different than the average feed, but it's all good.
Okay.
But
there might have been something that we did in the early days for the Volvo to explain to people when the Volvo made the shift from Whitbread 60s or Volvo to 70s. We at one point we created a video to explain to people the reason for canting keel and the reason why when you have a canting keel that you need a dagger board.
Right.
And that's probably what the video was, I should imagine. I think.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, and then let me see if I can. I don't want to jump around too much on this. How many of the 60s did you guys design?
So far, we've done eight boats.
Of them. Okay.
And I say at this point, these 8 boats. The first boat was Kingfisher, Alan MacArthur's boat, and almost all of these boats have been a design team effort. It's absolutely, completely not Merfyn Owen, and when we do the big projects like this Kingfisher, it's not even Owen Clark design. I was the lead designer for this boat, but it was a design team, including Rob Humphreys Yacht Design, Giovanni Belgrano from SP Gurrit was our composite engineer, SP Gurrit and Team New Zealand, and we had Gautier as a consultant who previously won the previous Vendée Globe and the previous BOC. So this whole idea of the design team was the French had 10, 12 years experience of designing Imoca 60s. or they weren't in Mocha at that point. They were Open 60s. I done a few things, sailed a few of the 60s, and I project managed the build and design of a French boat at JMV in Cherbourg. So I had a reasonable idea of what the best that was coming out of the French design and French yards at that time, and it was great. It was just marvelous, marvelous boats. But I could see that if we added something, if we attacked it from a design team perspective with a group of people who were very talented in specific areas, and then we added some funding in the way of wind tunnel testing, CFD, and tank testing, which had not appeared. Nobody's done that at that point in time with Imoca or Open. They simply relied on experience and feedback from the sailors and developed one boat and then developed the next and developed the next. And we needed to make a jump. And the way we made that jump was the design team, was wind tunnel testing, was CFD, was tank testing. And then we did a marvelous thing and built the boat in New Zealand. And that allowed Ellen to go down there and to splash the boat in the Hauraki Gulf. And then she had to sail it back to the UK. And she got to know her boat very well. And lo and behold, we slashed the boat in February 14th, I think it was. She left Auckland on middle of March 15th, 16th, something like that. Sailed the boat crewed to South America, and then the crew got off and single-handed to the UK. We had a short refit in May, and then at the beginning of June, she started the Transat race. And lo and behold, she won against all the skippers. Meet later in the year in Les Sables for the Vendée Globe. She won the Transat. Beat Miss Stage, beat Mike Golding, beat them all in one go.
That certainly turned some heads, didn't it?
Yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful story. Yeah, beautiful story.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you guys really will dig in and do whatever it takes, whether it's the extra tank testing or the two boat testing or whatever it really takes to make sure that you're putting out the proper boat for your customer. It's
a very different game now. We moved 20 years on from where Kingfisher was, and you could not design the latest 60s without doing that kind of work. The boats are more complex in terms of engineering and both composite engineering and fluid engineering. Far more complex questions being asked and solved. So the tools that we introduced into the class back then all the designers are using them, and it's a very, very different design slot. We entered the game, and I've heard other designers say this too, is that if you're entering a class for the very first time, a newly developed class, as a new designer, your best entry point is at a point where a class is changing, where either the rule changes, so the Whitbread rule changes to Whitbread 60, changes to Volvo 70. That opens a spot where designers from the outside can come in with some new ideas, bring in ideas from their own experience, and make something different and change the shape of the way the boats had been going in that class. And we were fortunate enough to grasp that point just at the point where Open 60s became Imoca 60s, and we were able to apply some really good people and good technology and make a break. And that's really how Kingfisher happened, and it's actually how Class 40 happened too. We got in very early days of Class 40. We've been designing them for years, and but it was at the beginning of the class. So you bring in innovative thought, new thinking, enter a class as a rule changes or a new class is developed, and then you're on the same level as everybody else. Even though the usual suspects might have 10 years more experience in those in a similar kind of boat, you have that opportunity.
Right. Yeah, the Class 40s are really intriguing to me. I think there's probably 4 in town here in Charleston. It sounds like there's one down in Savannah, but we see them out playing around every once in a while, and then obviously every May, we get a big swarm of them. So it's and they're gorgeous boats, and it's cool to see them when they're in the harbor.
They're great boats. It's the Class 40 is not just about the boats; it's also about the people. The people involved with all the. It's a big family, and the events are fun, and the boats are. They may not look it, but they are super easy to sail. Not Charleston Race Week would be a handful, and the Atlantic Cup. When you do the Atlantic Cup, the double-handed legs are fantastic. And then we get to Portland and we race around the cans fully crewed. Fully crewed for us is 5 or 6 people on the boat. Okay. That's really hard work racing 40s around the cans because they're not. They're set up for being offshore, and when you're offshore, gosh, it's easy miles and great fun sailing.
Really?
And they're much easier to sail than they might look.
Right. I believe this is you on Dragon, correct?
Oh yeah. That was Atlantic Cup 4 years ago.
Okay. I believe the boat is still here in town. I think it lives up at City Boatyard. So, but that's a beautiful boat. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the Mocha 60s, especially with the introduction of doing the ocean race. I want to call it the Volvo, and it stumps me every time. A lot of people have been asking that, we're taking foiling boats now and we're ripping around the world in places where there's a lot of debris. What are they going to do to you can't avoid it. You're going to hit it because it's, you can't avoid some of it, but, eventually you're going to probably hit something. Are they able to change the foils at sea, or are they done when they hit something?
No, they'll be done.
Really?
Yeah. Foils now, they're incredibly heavy, very complex. If you break a foil at sea, that's that leg over and done with.
Wow.
When we designed Kingfisher and actually a bunch of our boats for the Vendée Globe, obviously the thing about the Vendée is it's only one leg. You start in France, and if you stop along the way and get help, that's the end of it. And that's not just the end of the race; it's probably the end of a 2 or 3 year campaign.
Right.
So when we did Ellen's Kingfisher, we designed the boards and the board cases with a crash box, and we added some weight into the boat there. Mm-hmm. And the board's reversible, and she took the lead from Mish Des coming up the South Atlantic, and then hit a whale and broke her daggerboard.
Oh.
And she removed that daggerboard, which weighed then about 70 kilos. Got the daggerboard out, threw that bit over the side, got the one out of the port side, and turned it upside down, knocked out the shiv box, which is already built in, and she was able to carry on racing. You're not going to do that with the foils on a boat like Hugo Boss.
No,
it's just not for that. So no, if they break a board, that'll be the end of that leg for them. It'll be that competitive. It'll be hard to believe that they'll be able to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not keep going, but they won't be at speed.
Yeah. And it seems like this route this year, they're going to be kind of going into not necessarily uncharted waters, but in areas that we really haven't raced in the past. So it'll be interesting to make sure that they don't get into some of that debris. They may have to rein it back at night a little bit just so that they can avoid some of that stuff.
I can't see that happening. I can't see that happening. You're not in the moment. You'll just take risk and just keep on going.
Yeah.
And when the foil boats first started out, you would say that they were the Mocha 60s when the rule changed, and foils had to be brought in to make the new boats at least as fast as the old boats. Because there was a moment in time within the Mocha rule, it changed 3 times.
Okay.
And it had to be adapted because it was looking like the new boats to the new rule were actually going to be slower than the old boats. Not very cool. So that's how the foil thing came around. It was because they introduced a lower maximum righting moment. And the idea of that was to make the boats simpler, less expensive, and make it easier for the sailors to sail the boats. Because all the designers, we were increasing the righting moment all the time, and the boats were, hard beasts to sail.
Right.
So the whole writing moment, static writing moment, was introduced to make the boats less expensive and easier to sail. Didn't go very well then. But anyway, that's part of it. The deal was that the first generation of boats included some of the older boats, and they were basically foil assisted. So they were Immoccas, what we would call traditional Immoccas hulls, which were gaining some of their writing moment from the keel, some from hull buoyancy, and a proportion from the foil. They weren't wholly reliant on the foil.
Right.
So if they broke the foil, you basically had underneath, you still had an Imoca 60.
Right.
Not the case for the latest boats. To win the Vendée now, or to win the Volvo, all your effort is in the foil, and your hull shape is optimized in order to get you onto that foil as early as you possibly can. So the hull shapes now are completely different from where the boats were, even in 2013, 14.
Really?
So they have all their eggs in one basket, and that basket is a foil which sticks out the side of the boat a long, long way.
Wow. So does the hull shape include what I would call a spoiler or a break, to where you're trying to break the laminar flow to get the boat to induce the foil a little quicker?
No, the deal is all about is reducing the drag when the boat is sailing in lighter airs.
Right.
So we used to be looking at improving the boat's performance and righting moment and stability for the hull, for the medium part of the boat's operational area.
Mm-hmm.
For a Volvo, amazingly, that's about 13.5 knots true wind speed and about 110 or so true wind angle. So all the boat was basically optimized around this middle reaching part,
Right.
on the understanding that the boat, you're going to go downwind, and there's potentially a reasonably significant bit of upwind up the South Atlantic. But now the hull shape is not about that. It's about getting the boat to the point where the foils are taking over. And in the very early days, that was at 18 knots. The foils weren't that big, and
Right.
you had to get the boat towards the 17, 18 knots in order to generate significant lift out of the foil to overcome their drag. The reality is you don't get something for nothing, and the lift you get from a foil is a function of the boat speed squared. So the lift you're getting at 10 knots is only a quarter of the lift that you're getting at 20 knots.
Okay.
So what's happened is that's why you've seen the foils get bigger and bigger, because they're trying to get the boats to lift at an earlier boat speed.
Right.
Because in fact, the average wind speed around the world on a round the world yacht race is not that high. As I said, on the Vendée, it's less than 14 knots.
Right. Wow. And these boats only have the foils. They're only creating lift from the actual foils. There's not an elevator on the rudder, correct? That's why the boat always seems to want to be on a. It looks like it's doing wheelies all the time.
That's right, and that's the challenge of the challenge is not, is we all knew. I mean, we tank tested foils on Ekava 3 in 2006 for the design of Ekava 3, which was the boat 2008 race. We designed, we tested foils, and we tested a thing called the Interceptor. We took on the Interceptor, but we didn't take on the foils when we built Ekiva 3. So Ekiva 3 had an Interceptor, but it had no foils. Okay. The challenge with the foil thing is not getting the lift out of them. That's well understood. People have been applying foils to multi-hulls for generations. The deal is control, and Imoca have deliberately not allowed you to have these appendages on the rudder, which allow you to trim the rudder. Okay. Because they didn't really want Imoca 60s to fly. Now, does that seem? I've heard that before. What was it called? I think it was America's Cup. We didn't expect them to fly, but the sailors and the designers will push you to the limit. But the challenge isn't getting the boat to fly. The challenge is control. That's the challenge. Yeah. Is to be able to control that lift. It's well understood how you get lift. Yeah. The challenge is controlling it. And Imoca have deliberately not allowed us to have trim tabs on the rudders. And so what you end up having to do is we have a certain amount of ability to trim the big foil, but we can't, like the America's Cup, link it to a control system and have it trimming on a control system. So it's not actively trimmed, as it were. Okay. And we can trim using water ballast tanks, small water ballast tanks at the back of the boat. Okay. But we can't react to individual waves, and we can't react to individual gusts. So we have to set the boats have to be set up in a manner that takes on reasonable control in a mean number of conditions. But when you go outside those mean conditions, then you don't have an active way of controlling the boat, and that's when things can go exciting. Yeah.
Well, and especially now they're going to take, when they do the ocean race, they're going to take a boat that was designed for 2 people to sail, and they're going to put 5 of them on it now. So now you got even more people in the back of the boat. So they may have to be sliding people, forward, more and more forward all the time, just to kind of keep the bow down and keep the drag.
We used to race the 60s back in between 2000 and 2006. There was an awful lot of crude racing of the 60s. There was more double-handed and crude, and I say crude as in 4 or 5 people. There was more of that than there were single-handed events by far. Right. Actually, to the extent that on Ekiva 3 we had 2 coffee grinders because we anticipated doing a lot of crude racing, but then that side of things died down on Imoca, and it became a mainly single-handed and double-handed event again. In terms of having 5 crew on the boat, apart from the fact that it's cozy, I don't foresee a problem as such in designing a boat that's an Imoca boat and a Volvo boat. Okay. The rule is basically the same rule. There is a I've called it a Volvo, haven't I? But
I think we're going to do that for at least the next go round.
Yeah. There are technical sides of the rule, which means that they're not quite actually the same boat, in that the water ballast tank size will be different and the bulb weights will be different, but not by very much, not by such an amount that you couldn't adapt one to the other. So a Imoca boat for the Vendée could do the ocean race, and an ocean race boat could do the Vendée. The crew thing is a matter of deck layouts and steering. How they're going to develop the steering positions for the boat, and the inside of the boat. Yeah, it'll be cozy, but yeah, that's just the way it's going to be, and I'm sure they'll adapt very quickly to their surroundings.
Exactly. So what's next on the horizon? I mean, obviously you designed and work with a lot of really awesome programs. What's what's the next down the line for us to see of big racing yachts? I mean, we've got them close to flying. Are they going to be fully flying soon?
I think, in short, it's inevitable. You can't take the genie out of the bottle. You can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Right. Yep.
Everyone's seen it now. The sailors enjoy the boats, so I think it's inevitable. Foiling boats are here to stay for the very same reason that, back when I first started racing, my first monohull I designed was a water ballasted carbon keel monohull, and it was a very odd beast in its day because everyone else was going around in pretty normal boats. And then when canting keelers came around, again, we were very odd to have these canting keelers.
Yeah.
But actually, it's fairly blasé now, isn't it? Canting keel boats, and the same will be true of foiling boats. They'll just be another part of the sailing community, and the percentage of them around will increase as the number of sailors who get to learn how to sail them will increase.
Absolutely.
They're here to stay.
Yeah.
Offshore depends on the rule. Depends how the rules let you sail them.
Yeah, and I mean, can the handicap rule systems keep up with it?
No.
It's gonna be a whole new monster, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the amount of money that the teams have in order to develop, they never really caught up with They never caught up with us when we were doing water ballasted boats. They haven't really caught up with us with the class 40s. They haven't caught up with us with the canting keel boats. And the reality is that to a certain extent, many of the rating classes, quite rightly, are protect the main body of the class.
Yeah.
Which is as it should be. So, no, they won't be able to keep up. One, because I think they have to protect the class, the main body of the class.
Yeah.
But also because we have so much money to develop and spend relative to the rating authorities we're always going to be out designing. We're always going to be a move ahead. If not, then we're not doing our job.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know there's even, you look at an ORC rating right now of a boat that is capable of water ballast. They actually have a second rating for the boats when they're going to flip the switch and use them or not. So now if you introduce foiling to it, ORC won't be able to keep up, at least to my knowledge. So at this point, so it'll be interesting at that point once some of these boats start getting sold off to not the average Joe, but if they were to show up here in Charleston, I'm not sure that our handicap system would even know what to do with them. But I'm sure they'd figure it out because they want to see the boats here. So let's talk a little bit about your sailing background. You obviously you've designed these boats and you've got to spend a lot of time on it. It looks like here, as of the writing of this bio that you sent me, you've got 250,000 miles plus. 90,000 of that is a skipper, and 20,000 of that is in racing multi-hulls. So, how many trips around the planet?
1.5.
Okay.
Most of the big miles are Atlantic stuff.
Okay.
I did one long trip from Australia to the US via the Horn, and then I was fortunate enough to as skipper to do the 96-97 BT Global Challenge, which was from the UK down to Rio, and then Rio to Cape Horn, and then upwind in the Southern Ocean to Wellington, and then Wellington, Sydney to Cape Town, upwind in the Southern Indian Ocean again, and then Indian Ocean to Cape Town to Boston, and Boston back to Southampton. So that's my all the way round.
Okay.
Mostly been Atlantic and round Europe. And,
right. Right.
But
you've been involved.
The number tops up when you're 57. Oh, I'm 57 tomorrow. So 250,000 miles over, 30 years, 40 years. Oh my God, 40 years.
Yeah, it does say 40 years right here. You sent it to me. It's in writing. It looks like in 1993, that was your first rounding of Cape Horn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was during the BT Global Challenge, correct?
No, it wasn't. It was with a fella called Alan Wynne Thomas. Poor old Alan's not with us anymore. Yeah, that's him. And it's a great story. Alan was a multi-hull sailor, big multi-hull fan, and he and a fella called Mike Golding Mike had a 40-foot try of ours, and Alan was an investor, let's say, in the boat. Mike and he were mates. And then Alan bought a boat which quite a lot of your American listeners will know of, and Thursday's Child.
Okay.
He bought Thursday's Child and he entered it in the Vendée Globe. How everything is interconnected. And he entered in the Vendée Globe and in '93. And the race began in '93, and it was called Cardiff Discovery. He was sailing in the Southern Indian Ocean just past the Kerguelen Islands, so he'd gone well past the point of no return. He wasn't going back to Africa. And the boat got rolled, and he broke ribs on the front side of his chest and on his back side of his chest. He's in the middle of the Southern Ocean. Closest landfall is Tasmania. And day on the floor, can't get up. Told me, I remember him telling me he was breathing through his teeth, just sucking in little amounts of air until he could get on a bunk. And then once he got on a bunk, he passed out. He was on a bunk for several days. The mainsail was smashed, but the boat was on auto helm and it carried on sailing in the general direction for a couple of days. Obviously, Ray was trying to get hold of him. They couldn't get hold of him, but the boat was sailing. And eventually he managed to get to the med kit and he managed to get to SATCOM-C and get a message out to say he was okay, or okay-ish. And he sailed the boat to Tassie. And then he and I picked it up 6 months later once convalesced at least a little bit. And
right.
And we delivered, we sailed it from Hobart around the Horn. And the day before we arrived at the Horn, there was a fella coming in the opposite direction that we knew. And it was Mike Golding. And he was taking part in a single-handed record attempt, non-stop, around the world, the wrong way, going to Cape Lies record. And the three friends we met at Cape Horn. And I don't even know how we managed to arrange it. Perhaps by single sideband radio, because comms were not what they were in those days. Neither was positioning. Like, there was no continuous GPS positioning or any of that kind of thing. But we managed to meet off Cape Horn. We hoped to, in the classic fashion, and Mike sailed past us, and he threw us a gift bag at the time with a little bit of whiskey, treats and stuff. So isn't an amazing, beautiful moment in my life to my first rounding of the Horn, to see Mike and to do the race with such fantastic guys. Not the race, but the passage with Alan Thomas.
Right. That's cool. That's a neat moment. That's a cool story. I'm glad you shared that with us. So Matt Jess wants to know, did your experiences on the BT Global Challenge have much of an impact on your design philosophy?
It didn't on my design philosophy, but obviously you can't go through that kind of experience as a sailor and not learn an awful lot. But what I learned was not about sailing. What I learned about was people. I had not been, for sure, the best people manager during my time prior to the BT, in boatyards, project managers, designer, or whatever. Right. But I learned an awful lot about people during that race. And I learned from some very good people who coached me and mentored me, and then my crew. They thought that they were learning from me, but actually I was learning from them.
That's pretty cool. Did you let them know that post race?
Absolutely not. The captain, when you're in those conditions, you have to just keep your face straight and just make calls and decisions. Even if they're not the right ones, you have to make a call and decision and charge on. Because if you hesitate, they'll see you hesitate, and then they'll get worried. If you just charge on and act as if everything's completely bloody normal, then they'll follow you anywhere. So yeah, you can't hesitate.
Yeah. Yeah. What about after the fact?
There's no, apart from the usual debriefing that any race boat crew does. There's after the conditions, after the particular maneuver, or days later, once you can actually get together as a group, you have a debrief, talk through stuff, because it's a learning thing. Yeah. But what tends to happen, I don't know whether that happens in races like the Volvo, but once you hit the shore, the race is pretty much not talked about. Yeah. You just you get on with getting the boat ready and relaxing and blowing off a few fuses until the start of the next leg.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. So trying to just scroll through here. It looks like when you're in your spare time, you do some hiking and climbing. You still do some sailboat racing and Land Rover expeditions. So it sounds like you're on the go. You like to get outdoors and keep moving all the time, huh?
Yeah, and I'm really very lucky. I met this fantastic, or re-met my wife 5 years ago, and she's exactly the same mentality as I. Moss does not grow on a rolling stone, and doesn't grow on two rolling stones either. The lockdown has not been a quiet time for us.
Right. Yeah, I can't imagine if you're, we're all itching to get out there, and it's kind of the same for everybody. But if you guys are two of the same and you're just trying to get up and get going, it's probably pretty difficult. How have you been able to spend a little bit of time keeping your mind and body going during this time?
Well, Ash is because of the work that she does. She lost a lot of projects going right through till the end of the year. So it's okay. She's been working on the house pretty much, and I've been restricted to working on the house at the weekends. But they've been long weekends, and in the week I've been working as normal. It's still busy for us. We've still got projects on, and in fact we're due to get to know about the next project next week. So work-wise, hasn't affected us yet, and maybe it won't. It's a strange world, yacht design. You think that you're going to have a quiet time, and in fact you're as busy as you ever were, and then all of a sudden you'll have a quiet time, and you can't really explain why. Yeah. But we're busy as ever, and
that's good
for the moment.
Yeah, that's good.
We're lucky.
Yeah. So Liz Alonzi, I apologize if I screwed that one up. Do you have any recommendations for someone starting to learn foil assisted sailing?
No. You'd have to listen. You'd have to speak to I'm sure you're going to have somebody on there. Oh, you had Tom Slingsby on, Bill, didn't you?
Yes. Yep. We had him on about a week and a half ago. Yeah,
I listened ahead of talking with you today. That was one of the talks that I listened to. Fascinating. No, I'm sorry. You'll really have to talk to somebody who's whizzing around the pond on moths and the like. I'm not a sailor. I certainly don't sail dinghies. I'm well known for not sailing anything I can't make a cup of tea on.
There you go. That's a good rule of thumb. We've got a couple of couple of foiling sailors here in Charleston, David Loring and Connor Bluen, and have been kind of knocking on their doors to try and get them to come on and do one of these and maybe do a talk about foiling. So Liz, I'll write your name down and reach out if I can manage to get those guys. So it looks like she's doing this on a 10.6 meter trimaran, so it's not a little boat.
That is not a little boat.
Wow. Get it flying and keep it flying. David Haylock, if you don't mind answering a few more questions before we...
No.
Would the new IMOCAs beat the pre-foil IMOCAs around the cans when we're lured sailing?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. It would entirely depend on the wind speed. Because the new boats, as I'm sure as David's worked out, don't go to windward terribly well, but they can foot off. And if they can foot off and there's enough speed, enough breeze to get the foils working, then although they may not be traveling to windward as one would in a normal normal sailboat, they can cover an awful lot of ground and have a very high VMG. So it really does depend on what the wind speed is. They are sticky little beasts in light airs, that's for sure. Right. There's any number of light wind race starts you can see it, watch on YouTube. But they're sticky in light airs. But once the breeze is up above the 10 knots or so, then very hard question to answer. But I appreciate why you asked that, David.
Yeah. Well, it's, one thing I need to go back and look. They've introduced the route for the ocean race, but I don't know if they've introduced whether they're going to do the import series, and that might be a play, to see how these things actually do around the cans.
As I understand it, because I have been in the loop on this, because we were looking to do a boat for the ocean race, and one of our old boats may still do it, is that, as I understand it, the inshore, I could be speaking out of turn here, but there was a thought at one point that they would still do the inshores, but they wouldn't count towards the final race victory, as it were.
Okay.
That it was effectively going to be an offshore race.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. All right. Well, sir, I really appreciate you taking some time today and joining us. It looks like we had 20 to 30 viewers throughout the deal, and we'll probably have another 30 or 40 because people tend to tune in at night and watch them. But we definitely appreciate you taking the time and spending a little time with us. Is there anything else you'd like to kind of get out there to the public before we log off?
No, not really.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your lockdown. Stay busy. What's that?
I was going to say, I was glad you didn't ask me to tell you a story about Rodney Keenan.
Well, now that you mention it, you should.
No.
Nope.
I would either embarrass him or myself, or it would sound boastful. All the stories tend to be a bit like that. Embarrassing or boasting.
Well, Rodney's a great guy. We all love him, and I've only gotten one good story, and that was from Chris, I think. So we'll get somebody else to get a good story, a good Rodney story out there. And I might be going to sail with him in San Francisco later in the fall, so maybe I can get a story.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah. All right, everybody. I appreciate everybody coming by and watching us. Please do us a favor and like and follow Evolution Sales USA and Evolution Sales New Zealand. And please share this with all of your friends, because we're just trying to get the word out, keep people thinking about sailing until we can go sailing. Until then, we'll see you on the water. Thanks a lot, Merfyn. We'll see you when we're on the West Coast sometime.
Cheers, Bill.
Bye.
Bye.